Arma Reforger can be a brutal learning curve, especially if you're new to the milsim world. Every time I jump in, I find I'm picking up something new, and whilst the tutorial and in-game manual help, they don't cover it all. So I've decided to put together 16 tips that I wish I knew from the very start. Let's dive in. What's up gamers, thanks for coming back to the channel once again, and if you're new here, welcome along for the ride. As I mentioned in the intro, Arma Reforger is packed with so many moving parts, and whilst it does a good job of teaching you the basics, there are certain things it just completely leaves up to you to figure out. These tips I'm about to share with you are by no means any sort of secret hack or unfair advantage that you'll gain over other players, but rather things that I picked up from other players that really helped me that the game never taught me, and I wish that I knew earlier. The goal of this video is to show you a few tricks that might improve your experience in the game. So with that said, let's jump into the first one with tip number 1, saving your loadouts. Now, most of you probably already know this, but if you are new, it could save you a heap of time in game. Arsenals and loadouts are a bit of a hot topic right now, especially with a lot of players draining basis supplies by taking ridiculously expensive gear. I'm not going to get into that debate today, though this is more for those who are just trying to build a solid, reasonable kit. When I first started playing Arma, I spent way too much time making sure every item was perfectly placed in my inventory, only to die and repeat the process over and over again. Basically, I was wasting half my time at the arsenal. And that was until I took a moment to actually read through the options in the arsenal and realised I could actually save my loadout. This means the next time you spawn in, as long as you're at a base with enough supplies, you can just load in with your saved kit and skip all that reconfiguring. Of course, just be mindful not to spawn in at a base and drain all the available supplies with your loadout. If you're heading in to defend an area, try spawning in with a default loadout and grab a kit later on when you can. You can always check the cost of your loadout at the respawn screen, so keep an eye on that. And please don't be that player that runs around stacked up to the teeth with a bunch of gear and weapons that you don't even need. Keep it practical and think of the rest of the team with the supplies. Okay, moving on to tip number 2, earning extra XP. The quicker you rank up in conflict mode by capturing bases, delivering supplies or defending positions, the sooner you'll unlock access to structures like helipads and living quarters. But did you know that you can earn extra XP just by assigning yourself an objective? All you have to do is hold J by default on PC to bring up your objectives menu, or you can open your map and select an objective. Once you've assigned yourself one, head there and begin capturing the base. If you're successful, you'll be rewarded with about an extra 10% XP, helping you level up sooner. And it will also let your team know where you're headed, so they can be aware of your movements. That brings us to tip number 3, hidden supply depots. Supply depots are marked all over the map with the green icon. But here's a pro tip. There are also several hidden, unmarked supply caches scattered around that can give you the upper hand. And if you're lucky enough to find one of these hidden gems, make sure you grab your supplies from here instead. This way you'll have a much better chance of avoiding the enemy team, as well as keeping your bases stocked without running into too much resistance. In order to find these, keep an eye out for the big brown shipping containers. They'll have a signpost next to them with the supply box logo nearby. Some supplies may also be hidden inside, so be sure to check all buildings and look for the standard supply crate to find them. I've seen some players go on huge supply run hauls just to get taken out in the process by an enemy ambush, when they didn't even realise there was a whole bunch of supplies sitting right under their nose at the very base they were trying to resupply. So when you capture a location, make sure to have a good look around before you go on any long journeys. Tip number 4, the importance of supplies. When I first started playing Arma, I used to blindly run around capturing objectives thinking I was doing the best thing for the team. And whilst I was contributing in some way, I soon realised that a lot of players simply overlook how critical supplies are. Without them, you're pretty much screwed. Supplies are what allow you to spawn in with your saved loadouts, deploy vehicles, as well as building essential structures like helipads, living quarters and med tents. Even though supply runs may not be the most glamorous of tasks, they are deeply appreciated by every member of the team. And they can also be a great way to rank up. If you're new to Arma, it's also a relatively simple task that can help ease you into the game while still being a valuable asset to the team. And if you follow tip number 4, you may not even have to travel that far to find them. So my advice here is to never underestimate the importance of supply runs. Volunteer for them whenever you can, and your team will definitely appreciate it. This ties in nicely with our next tip, an easier way to load supplies. So you've been handling the logistics and supply runs for the team. Good on ya. But did you know there's a super easy way to load supplies that will save you a heap of time? When I first started, I had no idea about this, and I'd jump out of the vehicle, run to the trunk, and start manually loading the supplies one by one. It was a real pain until I discovered a much quicker method. You can actually open up the supply depot by interacting with the sign that lets you instantly load supplies into the vehicle that's close by. This makes the whole process way more efficient, so you can load and unload supplies much faster. The same trick works for unloading too. Just head to the supply point where you want to drop them off, interact with the sign, and drag the supplies across, and bosh, you're done. It's a small thing, but it definitely speeds up the whole logistics process and makes things much easier. Number 6, structure placement. At first you might not give much thought to where you place your structures, but as you progress through the game you'll quickly realise just how crucial it is. Particularly for pilots trying to unload supplies, they'll run into problems if everything's too cramped and they can't land near the supply point. Not to mention if someone builds a vehicle depot smack bang in the middle of the base, navigating your way out can become a real headache. To keep things running smoothly, try spacing your structures out thoughtfully and placing them in sensible locations. For example, situating vehicle depots near roads for easy access can save a lot of time and frustration, and this will not only make your base operate more efficiently, but by spacing things out it will also keep your pilots happy when they come to pick you up or drop off those crucial supplies. Thoughtful planning can go a long way. Moving on to tip number 7, we have hiding the arsenal. This tip is closely related with number 6, focusing on smart building choices. The arsenal is often one of the primary targets during an assault by the enemy team. It's a real easy way for them to pick up quick kills while you and the rest of your buddies are distracted trying to figure out which uniform suits you best. Therefore, if you have enough supplies, I highly recommend hiding the arsenal and reinforcing it with some extra defences to protect yourself. A cool trick I learned recently was that you can actually conceal arsenals in camo tents. The key is to build the camo tent first and then place the arsenal inside. This is a great way to keep you safe and out of sight whilst perusing the arsenal, as opposed to inviting players and giving them a free kill. Number 8. The map is a fountain of knowledge. The map in Arma is one of the most underrated tools in your arsenal. Not only does it help you figure out where you're going, but it also provides valuable information that can save you a lot of time. If you hover over a captured base, not only does it show you how many supplies there are, but it also reveals what's been built at the base. This allows you to prioritise your supply runs or focus on building essential structures based on the current needs of the base. Using the map effectively can help you plan more strategically, as well as helping your team operate more efficiently. Moving on to tip number 9, build a living quarters. Once you hit the rank of Sergeant, you'll gain the ability to build what I personally believe is one of the most valuable structures you can add to any base, the living quarters. The living quarters allow you to spawn AI squads that will help defend your base, and in many cases these AI will react to enemy presence before you even notice them, giving you a nice tactical advantage. But here's the real bonus. Having a living quarters drastically reduces your loadout costs by about half. For example, check this out, I've created a ridiculously expensive loadout, purely for demonstration of course. And if I spawn at a base without a living quarters, the cost of the team is a whopping 285 supplies. However, if I spawn at a base with a living quarters, my loadout cost drops to 142. Still pricey, but much more manageable. It's a huge difference and it really shows the importance of having a living quarters to save your team resources. Not to mention with a loadout like this I weigh about 70 kilos and can barely move, so please don't do this. Tip number 10. Recruit AI. Here's another reason why the living quarters is one of my favourite features in Arma. Did you know that when you spawn AI you don't just have to leave them to defend the base, you can actually order them to follow you. This is incredibly useful if you're rolling solo or leading a small squad and need some extra firepower to help capture a base or hold a position. Of course the AI can sometimes be a little bit buggy, but honestly when has Arma ever been without some shittiness from the AI? That's all part of the game. The good news is that update 1.3 is on the way and it's promising a bunch of AI improvements, so you might find that they start behaving a little bit more predictably. If you're ever feeling a little bit lonely in game and your friends are offline, just recruit some AI to have your back. It's a great way to add some muscle to your mission without having to rely on other players. You can achieve this on PC by hitting the tilt key and hitting the recruit command whilst looking at an AI squad member. I'm not sure of the exact controls for Xbox or PlayStation, but I'm sure somebody will be able to help out in the comments below. Number 11, how to win. This one might seem pretty obvious, but when I first dove into Conflict, I had no clue how the game actually ended, or how to tell if we were winning or losing. If you're in the same boat, here's a quick tip to help you out. In the top right corner of the screen, you'll see each faction listed with a number in the middle. That number indicates how many key objectives you need to hold to win. Once your faction holds the required number, a 5-minute timer will start counting down. If you can hold those objectives for the full 5 minutes, your team wins. GG boys, GG. Key objectives are marked with pink text on the map, so next time you're in game, make sure you prioritise these locations. It's all about securing and holding those key spots to trigger the win condition. Simple but crucial. Tip 12, the enemy can hear you. Here's a handy one that might save you from some embarrassing situations. The enemy can hear you in proximity chat. When I first started, I had no idea that the enemy can hear what you're saying when you're chatting with your team. Sure, I knew you could listen in on enemy comms with a radio, but it wasn't until I was trying to take the enemy by surprise that I realised how easily you can give away your position by talking too loudly. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've been in the middle of an assault trying to stay quiet, only for some loudmouth next to me on my team to shout something in comms, alerting the enemy to our presence and spoiling the element of surprise. So next time you're planning a surprise attack or trying to stay under the radar, make sure to lock up your comms and keep your voice down. It could be the difference between a successful attack or a botched one. But remember, as much as the enemy can hear you, you can also hear them, and you can use this to your advantage. Number 13, inspecting weapons. This tip is particularly useful for when you need to quickly swap out or add attachments to your weapon. For me personally, I prefer running around with the SVD or the M21, with a scope for long range engagements and then taking it off for close quarters combat. In the past, I would open up my inventory to inspect my weapon and then drag the attachment on or off manually. The problem with this method is that it often leaves you distracted and unaware of your surroundings while you're stuck in the inventory. Instead, what I learned was that you can hold R on PC, Y on Xbox or triangle on PlayStation to inspect your weapon on the move. And this allows you to quickly add or remove attachments without losing sight of your surroundings. Not to mention, it's a far quicker way to add or remove attachments without having to go into the inventory. Number 14, double tap enemies. Just because you've dropped an opponent after an engagement doesn't mean that they're out of the fight. In Arma, shot placement is crucial, and you may have only just rendered them unconscious. If you're not careful, that player will end up resurrecting like the Undertaker himself and coming back to bite you on the arse. Trust me, I've fallen victim to this more times than I care to admit. So to avoid this, always follow up with a quick double tap to confirm the kill. A couple of extra shots will make sure the enemy stays down for good, reducing the chances of them coming back and giving you a nasty surprise. Tip number 15, save loadouts from backpack radios. This is something that I only discovered recently. For the longest time, I was under the impression that whenever you deploy a radio backpack, you can only spawn in with a default kit. However, I recently found that there's an option to enable saved loadouts, and this allows you to spawn in with any custom kit that you've pre-configured and saved, giving you the ability to quickly get back into the fight with all the gear and weapons that you may need. The key thing to remember here is that you'll still need plenty of supplies nearby, so having a solid plan for resupply is essential if you want to maintain your loadout. But it can be a really handy trick when you're in the middle of a long engagement and you need to respawn in quickly with some extra firepower. It can definitely give you a tactical advantage. So remember this for the next time you deploy a backpack radio, and it will save you and your squad the long, arduous journey from the main operating base when you respawn in. Tip 16, range finding. This tip is particularly useful if you're playing as the Russian faction and using the PSO scope on the SVD rifle. If you're familiar with it, you might already know how it works. But if you're new to the game or just new to shooters in general, this will be a handy way to quickly estimate your target's range. On the left hand side of the scope, you'll see a sliding scale that ranges from 2 to 10, which represents the distance in hundreds of meters. At the bottom of the scale, you'll notice the number 1.7. This is the reference height used for the range finding system. The 1.7 meters represents the average height of an adult male. In order to find the range, find a standing target and line them up so that their feet are at the bottom of the scale and their head touches the top line. The number where the target's head falls will give you an approximate range to that target in hundreds of meters. From there, you can adjust your scope zeroing to match the range and take the shot with more precision. This simple method lets you estimate range on the fly, which can make a huge difference when engaging at long targets. Once you get the hang of this, you'll find that you'll start to get an eye for it, and eventually you'll be pretty good at estimating distances without even using the scale. Well, that's all for today's video. I hope you found some of these tips helpful and can put them into good use in your next game. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could show your support by subscribing to the channel. It helps me keep making more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Keep it crispy, and I'll catch you soon.